Google has released some data showing that requests by governments all over the world is beyond bonkers, skyrocketing. So let's look at some of the numbers. So Google had 1,811 requests in the first half to remove information from various governments, and then 2,285 in the second half of 2012. And I thought this was fascinating. The top 5 countries that are requesting Google remove information: Brazil #1, US 2, Germany 3, India 4, and Turkey 5. So let's start with that country list before we get into the hardcore numbers about it. Kind of fascinating. US #2. Shouldn't Syria?
We should be #1.
Go USA. No, but shouldn't Syria and Iran? Where are all the bad guys?
Yeah, well, maybe they're on that list.
Or is it just because they don't put stuff up in the first place, so then they don't have to?
Well, and it's less populated too, so I'm sure the numbers are staggering when you go to Brazil and the United States with the amount of requests.
Right. But don't we think our internet is totally free here, and
Right.
that there's nothing that the government could possibly not want on the internet? I mean,
Yeah, so Brazil has a particular law that's, you can't say something before an election about a politician, which you would think that that's when you would want to say things about a politician.
Right.
So their numbers are skewed. But that's my problem with the U.S. I mean, we have the wiretapping on the one hand, and it's total invasion of our privacy. And then on the other hand, if you say something that the government doesn't like, whoa, we're going to have to take that down. Right. And I mean, we're supposed to be the bastion of the First Amendment, freedom of speech, etc. And so it's really disconcerting to see us at #2. And then as I was reading the article, the rest of the top 5 were in the last paragraph. I'm like, show me Turkey, I know it's there, boom, Turkey. And you know why? Because having grown up Turkish, everybody's offended at everything. Like, if you draw a mustache on Atatürk, the father of Turkey, they're like, oh my God, YouTube, take it down, take it down!
Yeah.
Someone has criticized Atatürk! And?
Yeah.
Like, just get over it, dude. It's going to be all right.
Right, but yeah, the "and" part that you're talking about, I mean, this rarely gets overlooked, when there's the film about Mohammed, and then, Egypt wants YouTube to take stuff down. So that leads to my next question, which is, should Google's basically bigger than all the world's governments at this point, should they get involved in this kind of stuff, or just say, tough, we're just putting it all out there? And
It's tough because there's freedom of speech, and although I'm all
here
for
at least.
and I'm all for freedom of speech, but then with this whole information age, now it's just freedom to lie is what it's basically become. So where is that line where we can't? We got to figure out how we can prove that this freedom of speech we have is the truth. That's why everyone's so confused in this country, is because I'm watching the news for 5 minutes this morning for work, and I hear on the news, a cow was purple today. I'm going to believe that, even though that cow was never purple. But I'm going to go the rest of my life thinking that was purple, because I never heard the rebuttal of that.
What channel are you watching?
It's Fox News, of course. But yeah, so I mean, it's just, everyone just throws anything out there, and people are going to believe it because you're being told.
Yeah. Isn't that just the price you have to pay for freedom? I mean, the social media has given us this incredible way of connecting people. Basically started the Arab Spring in Egypt, but it's going to come with a cost. For example, right now in Egypt, you could argue that they're worse off than they were under Mubarak.
Well, freedom isn't free, right? And so there is a cost to it. And the reason I'm so worried about U.S. being #2 on that list, and of course they're among the bigger populations in the world, and I get that. And China's in a whole different category in how they shut down Google, et cetera. And they've had huge problems with Google. And Google's in a tough spot because they're like, look, I want to be all over the world, but if I don't do what that government says, all of a sudden I don't have access to that giant market. So I kind of feel bad for them in that sense. But look, if your government is trying to stop you from learning something, be worried, right? And so, for example, the innocence of Muslims thing.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a Muslim and you really believe and you think Allah is up in heaven, etc., why would Allah, who knows everything and is all-powerful, be offended by a YouTube video?
Right.
Right? So, and if they're trying to keep that from you, it should make you go, I wonder if we're afraid of something, that people might find out something they're not supposed to.
Right. Well, that goes to that whole education thing that Lance was talking about earlier, about why that's the most important, because really critical thinking is the most important part. But my final question on this is, how would we know? At the end of the day, how would we know if our government right now was censoring stuff that they didn't want us to know? I'm looking at my Twitter timeline. If you don't see it, you don't see it. So I guess we're just all willful idiots. Is that fair to say?
Well, you hope that people raise a ruckus if something or somebody disappears.
Right.
Right. So, and there's still some good reporters out there, Glenn Greenwald, David Sirota, Jeremy Scahill, et cetera. And so there's some few people still on the watch. But yeah, largely if you're not reading those guys and something went away because the government didn't want it to be there, yeah, that's a tough situation.
Yeah. So you can read those guys, or I recommend Lance Bass, Cenk Uygur on Twitter. Both of you guys have your real names, by the way, which is that's
Wow,
pretty
they
much.
steal mine back. Someone was using it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And you probably had them snuffed out on the
Yeah,
DL.
They're disappeared.
Yeah. Well,
Exactly.
you didn't know until now.
Controlling information. I want to remind you guys that the official outfitter of the Rubin Report is Bonobos. Go to bonobos.com, use code TRR20, and get yourself this fancy shirt.